I've seen plenty of juxtaposition based horror at this point. My channel is built off of niche cute to scary web cartoons like Terrible Mouse and Pretty Blood, and more recently I've talked about Digital Circus and Creep Critters. But the thing about the Backwards House that sets it apart from all these previous ones I've analyzed is the fact that it's not only the best out of all of them, but it's also the first webtoon I'll be reviewing on the channel, like an actual webtoon. Though in case you don't know what it is, here's a quick overview. Skynix's The Backwards House, starting in November of 2025, is a horror mystery webcomic that's currently, as of July 24th, 2026, on a hiatus for an unknown amount of time due to funding issues. Not sponsored, but if you like the comic, then make sure to go support the author if you can. It's about a person who's transported into a childlike cartoon world after going down the basement of an abandoned house, and it follows their attempts at escaping and understanding this bizarre new world. While it sounds reminiscent of things like Digital Circus or sillier things like Goku being betrayed and trapped in a hyperbolic time chamber, this is honestly one of the best online stories I've seen when it comes to enacting this type of idea. This video assumes you've already read the comic, so it'll have a lot of spoilers so that I can give the most thorough analysis on why this webcomic works so well. And do note, this is not a story summary or anything like that. This is a mechanical analysis on what works and why the story is incredible. So with that out of the way, I want to get into the three main things that are most important when it comes to why this comic works. Those being the focus, simplicity, world building, and mystery. I'm not kidding. Without these three aspects being as good as they are, everything else would fall apart because this is what the story lives and dies on. It knows that it's a juxtaposition-based, cute to scary horror mystery story and owns it beautifully. It never tries to delve at all into things that don't build what it starts off as in chapter 1, and even this includes a comedy, which I'll analyze later. This intense focus and simplicity in what it wants to do makes its mystery, world building, and horror feel fully fleshed out, and the information we get from the Backwards House about its world through subtle hints, like the fact that the exit of the house is the basement and that's how Katie entered it, when they are human, which isn't pieced together by the characters themselves, which also implies that the Backwards House itself is like a cartoon false version of that real abandoned house. Or we get info from the characters themselves, finding out things like they respawn upon death. We, as the audience, are barely told about anything when it comes to how this world works. So when bizarre things happen, like when the game show in chapter 9 suddenly disappears and we don't get an explanation for how it happened, and because the characters themselves are still learning new things themselves about this world, it adds a ton of tension and stakes due to the fear of the unknown. The best example of how good this focused storytelling is found in chapter 11, when empathetic elephant sacrificed himself by making it seem like he left a blood trail that OD Dog left so that Katie and Dog can escape. He and we, the audience, just learned that upon death, you respawn, which makes you effectively immortal. He says, "We can't die here, remember? You already proved that." He only does this because he knows he can't die. When he sacrifices himself, some mother thinks that it's only him rebelling against her, and not also OD Dog and Katie. We never learned previously what she'd do to Empathetic. But since she's the owner of the Backwards House and definitely knows that her subjects are effectively immortal, we can understand that whatever she's going to do to him has to be worse than death, which creates a lot of tension before she decides to rip his eyes out of his head violently. Not only is the violence effective because a moment this extreme only ever happens one other time in the story, but also since we understand by this point that if you can't see your name, you forget about who you are, we understand why Mother did this and why this is worse than death. The information that we get previously and what we don't know yet in this scene is why it's so powerful, impactful, and effective. Because we know that even though Empathetic isn't dead, he may as well be now. If we knew what Mother's punishment was, then the scene would still be tense, but it'd be far less than not knowing. Us not knowing means we can't assume anything or understand anything, and leaving that door of possibilities open when it comes to something horror related is a big part of what makes things horrifying. Now that we know what the punishment for at least Empathetic Elephant was, we can assume that Mother will do the same to our main characters if she finds out that they've written their names down somewhere. And if that happens, then it's over for them, just like how it was for Empathetic. That's only thanks to the simple and focused nature of the comic. If it didn't carefully give us important bits of information like how the name writing mechanic works, or that the characters can respawn, and if it didn't focus so heavily on setting up information, mysteries, the atmosphere, and the stakes, then this moment wouldn't hit as hard because it would have been less built up. All of that specific focus on build up is why the scene where Empathetic effectively dies is so memorable, and it's why the story works in the first place. Comedy plus underlying dread. On a surface level, it may be tempting to say that this is also a comedy series because of the many funny moments and fully light-hearted comedic chapters like 8 and 9 where the characters all play in a silly game show to win prizes. While I think this webtoon is actually very funny when it wants to be, it's also important to note that the comedy is just a necessary part of the story for two reasons. While the simplicity at play here and the focus on its main genre is why it's so effective, still, mechanically, if the story literally was only the horror, mystery, and tension 24/7, then that aspect will start losing its punch. It's why simpler horror games like FNAF quickly stop being effective and are much better in short bursts. After like 2 hours, you fully understand everything, which makes that game not scary anymore, which is why Scott had to basically make the first 4 in less than a year for it to continually be successful and impactful horror-wise. The comedic and lighthearted moments in the Backwards House serve as small breaks of the horror to make the serious parts of the story pop more because they become more stand out. Thusly, it actually both serves a cute to scary juxtaposition-based premise, and it offers breaks so you're not locked into one mood and drained. One moment the characters are doing a silly dance battle, and the next Katie gets their entire upper body chomped like Aaron from Attack on Titan when he fought Santa.
Ho ho ho!
The disco battle contrasted or juxtaposed to Katie's violent death in the next chapter is why moments like that actually hit. Because this being in the same comic feels insane, and the fact that we just saw this character having fun, wholesomely in like a childish way, makes us feel just 10 times crazier. Now the second reason as to why the comedy is important is again for the juxtaposition to work so well in another way. It further establishes Mother's intended vibe for the Backwards House and what it seems to be on the surface. It's a wacky, silly cartoon world where cartoon kids can have infinite fun and food, and it seems like everyone's just having a great time. The entire chapter is dedicated to silly moments, and all the extended funny moments between the side characters build up that atmosphere, while the serious moments completely destroy it. It lets us see the fake reality of the Backwards House and what it does to you if you let it or forget, versus the very real struggles and attempts to escape someone who controls a dimension that's trying to force you to play along by erasing who you originally were. During moments like the house tour, where Posh Pine's showing Curious Cat around, it's easy to forget that Posh was actually a person. They had memories, a whole life, and as the story takes place, he's missing in the real world, so is everyone else, so certainly his family is looking for him. But in here, due to him forgetting his name, he's been reduced to a simple, flat, one-note rich kid cartoon character who's obsessed with time. So, in another, almost third and secret way, the comedy exists to build underlying dread and discomfort. Empathetic in chapter 12 explains that at one point, before Katie and Dog came into the house, everyone remembered who they were and they wanted to band together in order to force Mother to free them. But someone betrayed them and scratched all their names out that they wrote in various secret places, causing everyone to forget about who they are and to regress into simple, one-note flat cartoon characters personality-wise. That's what the comedic parts are. Knowing that if Katie just forgets their name, they forget who they are and they effectively have their mind replaced, just like everyone else, makes each and every funny part in reality uncomfortable. Even if the jokes weren't funny, this deeper aspect of the comedy makes the horror more effective, but since the jokes are actually funny, it makes it easy to forget, just like the characters, that their personalities and these comedic moments are built off of forcefully removing who all these people originally were from their own minds. Simple characterization. I've talked about the characterization a little bit already, but I want to go into it more heavily. In the Backwards House, the environment causes you to forget about who you originally were over time, and the only known way to remember who you really were on the outside is by remembering your name. If it's scratched out or if you yourself forget it, then everyone else who knew it also forgets it. So, characters write their names down secretly since Mother doesn't want them to remember who they are, since if she found their names, she'd just scratch them out. This is why during the night where Empathetic talks about everyone's names being scratched out, they forget about who they are. An elephant only remembered because he had a backup painted on the outside of the house that he checks every night. This is why all the side characters being flat is actually good for the story. It emphasizes the fact that their actual thoughts and humanity was taken away from them by the environment that they're in. So them being one note works in furthering that dread I was talking about in the last section. Though, this isn't to say that our main characters who remember who they are deep or anything. Elliot, Katie, and OD Dog aren't complicated characters, and the story doesn't focus on richly characterizing them, but this is fine because that's not the story's aim or point. The reason why they work so well at being sympathetic and still feeling like real people is because of their contrast with the other side characters, and because we get just enough to show what they lost or who they are through their thought processes. Seeing Katie next to Posh Pine makes Katie, in comparison to Posh, feel 10 times more like a real person since Katie actually has more sides than caring about time and being bratty, while us getting the backstory of OD Dog where he used to be a great artist, and then the shift of that into the childishly made kindergarten level stuff due to him losing who he originally was, is enough to have us see that OD Dog used to be a person with skills and aspirations that was trapped in here, just like Katie, Elliot, and everyone else. And him scratching his own name out shows that at some point, he just gave up, with Elliot's later recounting of why he ended up giving up, making that moment even sadder. In short, the pieces we get from characters like OD Dog and Katie, even though Katie, for example, mostly boils down to being sharp, intelligent, and very logical, makes them actually feel like people. And the horrendously crushing situation they're in adds to us wanting these people who haven't done anything wrong to escape out of this place. It does this while reveling in its flatter characters like Foxtrot or Shy Shark, because that's the point, and because of these reasons, the characters for the story don't need to be super deep or complex. Clarity and logic. The comic always makes sure the audience definitely gets what it wants you to while still being mysterious. The clarity on display within the story is most clear in chapter 1 when Katie plays with the other people in the house. When that happens, they lose who they are, though when they're about to go to sleep, they see the writing on their ceiling that they made earlier in the chapter to remember their name. Chapter 1, having Katie go through this, makes the memory mechanic of this world very clear while showing how easy it is to lose yourself, just by having fun. If you don't see your name for a while and play into what this place is, then you'll become a part of it. A big thing that adds to the clarity of this comic and what it wants you to understand is the character's logical deduction and reasoning, which oftentimes brings them to beliefs and motivations based off of experiences, which is also for us readers all that we have access to. This is one of my favorite parts of the story, not only because seeing how characters come to their conclusions is cool, but also because it forces us to come to their same brutal logical thought processes as opposed to relying on implications. After Empathetic gets his eyes ripped out, Katie and OD Dog want to tell him his name, but Empathetic tells him if I'm suddenly able to remember it again, she'll know someone else was helping me. This is why Empathetic is effectively dead and why it hits so hard. He can't see his name anymore, so he'll slowly forget who he is, though both of his friends that can see his name can't tell him without effectively telling on themselves, which would make Empathetic's sacrifice meaningless. On top of this, these logical deductions and the clarity it brings removes any possible audience questions. Like for this scenario, if Empathetic didn't break it down, we not only wouldn't be hit with that brute fact, but some people reading may wonder why didn't they just tell Empathetic his name is Elliot, due to it already being accounted for by the characters. And with things being accounted for by the characters with the best possible evidence, the comic also completely sidesteps the why didn't they do blank question that can easily come up in stories like this. The logic of each and every action is explained within the story by character thought processes, and the characters actively choose the best possible choices given the information they learn, which makes all moments where they decide to do something feel like they've done everything that they can. So when things go wrong, like when Katie is killed by the nightmare, it just feels even more dreadful and horrifying because these are truly competent characters and yet they're still getting totally owned by the environment. Technically, the characters don't have to logically explain anything relating to their thought process, as most scenes with it can be figured out yourself before the characters make those deductions. I was able to almost correctly assume things like the fact that you probably just respawn in this world, and that when Empathetic lost his eyes, he was screwed before the characters broke those facts down or figured it out themselves. But the clarity and understanding we get from those logical explanations allows for the story to be understood by far more people and makes our characters feel satisfyingly competent and smart, which is important since a lot of horror or thriller series will have the characters just be stupid so something can happen and you'll be screaming at the screen, "Why didn't you just do blank?"
Didn't you dodge?
Conclusion. There are a few other tiny things I could probably praise the series on, like its art style, its encouragement for fancy theorycraft, and its great pacing, but I don't think those aspects really deserve their own sections like I do with the ones I've already discussed. I suggest you check out the webtoon, and if you really like it, help them out on Patreon. But aside from that, go ahead and subscribe, check out the secondary channel, and I'll see you in whatever I post next.